Ann?
Signed up with her. I said signed up.
Good evening, anyone. I'd like to call to order the East Bay Township Regular Planning Commission meeting on Tuesday, July 5th. First thing on the agenda here is the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand and join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right. And can we get a roll call, please?
Ferguson.
Here.
Gonzalez.
Here.
Nimitz.
Here.
Edley. Here. Leonard.
Here.
And Walters.
Present.
Thank you. Next on the agenda under 4A is a review for conflict of any interest. Anyone on the Planning Commission have any issue with any of the items, need to recuse themselves? Okay. Hearing none. Going to approval of the agenda.
Can I add something possibly?
Sure.
Two things. Might want to, my term is up as secretary and as commissioner, so we might want to add, if that's appropriate at this time, to add election of secretary to the chairperson as well.
Okay.
And then lastly, maybe after E, do an F or I don't know, one of those numbers. I'd like to maybe just review a few items that might have been left on the parking lot or unfinished things, and maybe get an update from Claire, or doing that during Claire's time with us.
Sure.
Whatever, what do you think? You want to do it during your time, or do you want to do it at the end?
I'd be happy to, during the planning and zoning department
Oh, okay.
update, answer any.
Okay, thanks. We'll just add that then.
Okay, so we'll just add,
And then I'll move to, anybody else? I'll move to approve the agenda of Tuesday, July 5th, 2022, with the amendment of the secretary and unfinished or catch-up items.
Second.
okay, moved by Nemitz, second by Gonzalez. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next on the docket is the approval of the minutes of June 7, 2022. Any comments, revisions,
I
alterations?
have one correction on page 6. I guess it's the third or the second paragraph down. Anne misspelled her name, or her husband's name, Wendling.
Oh.
It's Wendling. Sorry, I didn't think you'd miss that, and I meant to email you so we didn't have to do it, but I'm sorry I was late. You probably just got used to typing fast.
Paul, did you have anything?
Yes, I did. On page 7, under the the approval items, delineation is, number 3 is missing. However, I would think that we'd also want to add some others that were, I believe, added in there, and that was, one, the removal of the sales hut, or the building. The second was the agreement that there was no ferrying of other watercraft to the Sugar Beach site. And then the third was a written agreement between Traverse City Water Sports and the Sugar Beach Hotel for the 7 parking slots in the parking lot for the employees.
Okay, I just want to make sure you got them all.
So the first one, the applicant is on page 5. The applicant is proposing the continuation of the boat and rental ski and a dock and deploy, but will eliminate a minor accessory building previously proposed. So it's on there, it's in the minutes.
It's in the minutes, but I thought we had made that as a condition.
I don't recall that being in the motion because it was in the applicant's packet.
Wasn't it in the revised site plan? It
Yeah.
was eliminated from the revised site plan, is that
Yeah.
correct?
That's correct.
But Paul, are you suggesting, well, I'd have to look back at the motion.
Well, if in fact, the removal of the sales hut stands because it's in the minutes, that's fine. But there were those two other items that were agreed to.
And I've just got to go back because I recall that they were going to remove it on the site plan itself as well, right?
Yeah, and they did submit a site plan that evening that
That
had
had that.
removed it.
Yeah.
So that was supplemental.
Okay. So, yeah, I think that, I mean, that's going to be a part of their review on an annual basis, so I imagine we should be covered.
That's fine,
But thank you for pointing that out.
all right?
Any other updates besides those two? From anyone else? If not, I'd entertain a motion for approval of the minutes.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from the June 7th meeting, 2022.
With those two,
With the,
correct?
with the amendments, yes.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. So we have a motion by Renee, second by Paul. All those in favor signify by saying aye, or do you want discussion on the motion?
Yeah, I don't know that we can do that.
Well, we were updating the minutes more so than, Paul, your recommendation for the second portion was not to adjust the language of the motion, right? It was just clarification within the text?
It was just a clarification, yeah, because number 3 was missing. You know, you have item 1, 2, 4, 5. So either we change the numerical order of that, and then based on the discussion with the group, it was pointed out that we do have the notification of the removal of the hut and the other items were also. So they would stand as they are right now, except for the correction of the number order.
Okay, so,
I think, help me understand, Mindy, I think Mindy was kind of asking, can we adjust the conditions? And I don't think we can unless we look back at the
I think we can
film.
review the recording
Yeah.
and see if there's anything missing.
Is that what you were saying?
Yeah.
Okay,
I think-
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to,
because I don't think we can,
yeah,
if we didn't have that provision in there when we discussed it, we can't add it now.
but I see what Paul's seeing though. So did we, because we had a pretty
So we
lengthy.
can't approve these. We need to, I believe we need to ask to go back and review the tapes. Maybe Brian's gonna jump in here, but we need to ask them to review the tapes and bring it back to next meeting.
because it does say in the minutes that we
Brian's
discussed
try-
the parking
Yeah.
and stuff. But,
What I see, obviously, your minutes must reflect what occurred at the meeting for which they're attuned to. And so if there's questions as to what actually transpired, then it's my recommendation that the approval of these minutes be tabled and that you review the tape and come back at the next meeting.
That sounds
like a
good.
good
I feel much more comfortable about that because I totally appreciate you pointing that out. And yeah, thank you, Brian, for that clarity.
I'll make a motion that we,
We have
oh,
one
go
on
ahead.
the floor.
Oh, we do, is that,
We have a motion on the floor, so let's vote that down.
okay,
It's okay.
sorry.
Thank you for the motion, but, so we'll just go through the emotions just to make sure. So all those in favor of approving the request at this time signify by saying aye. All those opposed?
Aye.
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 Okay, motion fails. So then, Judy.
Okay, well, I would make a motion that we postpone the approval of the planning commission minutes until we review the tape recording regarding the conditions for the Sugar Beach.
Technically, the motion is to table.
Oh, it's not postponed,
Are you
according to
saying
Robert's
table?
rules?
Correct.
Okay, then it's tabled. And then can I make a second amendment to that motion to approve the site plan minutes?
Those are all part of the same minutes, are they not?
They're not.
Site plan visit.
Visit minutes, review.
Yeah, Brian, we've got one. Go ahead.
If they're a separate set of minutes, you can approve those separate set of minutes if they accurately reflect what happened.
So you'd like to bundle the two, one is a table and one is a separate? Okay. Is everyone clear on that? We could do them individually just for sanity purposes, I think, just to be clear. So could we just do the table?
Yes, yes.
Okay, just to be clear. So all those in favor of tabling the minutes of June 7th, 2022 for clarification of the Sugar Beach and other things, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Thank you. The motion is tabled. And on to the site plan visit and the meeting minutes of June 7th, 2022. Yes, Mindy.
Yeah, support for that that last motion.
I jumped one. I apologize.
So Renee can do it. You're right. I'll support it.
Thank you. Thank you. We're all cutting teeth. Thank you. So on to the site visit minutes.
So question, are we
Yes.
doing each site review separately, or are we doing them all together?
I think we can do them all collectively. That's what we've done in the past, generally.
Well, I didn't,
I know there's a lot.
Yeah.
okay.
Then I'll move to approve the site plan review minutes for the June 2nd, 2022 for the site plan review 922, the Hyatt Hotel. The site plan review 822, TC Water Sports, and the site plan review of 622 and special land use 422 JT Land Company.
Is there a second on that?
I'll support it, but I have a question.
Okay.
Sure.
Was it June 2nd or June 7th?
June 7th.
June 7th.
Okay, I heard second, so I just want to clarify.
Okay. So we got a motion by Gonzalez, second by Walters. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Okay. On to public comment. If there's any public comment for this evening for items not on the agenda, please come up, state your name and address, and address the board.
Hi, Beth Friend, Supervisor. Thank you for letting me take the opportunity during public comment to express appreciation to two of your current and former board members on the Planning Commission. So John Syke has resigned, and unfortunately, due to other circumstances, he had to miss his last meeting and was able to really say goodbye. And so he's going to take that opportunity tonight. And Judy has mentioned that her term is up, and she has opted not to do a reappointment. And so I tell you, regardless of the length of time you're on a planning commission, it is a service to the community. Judy has been on this planning commission for 15 years, beginning in 2007, and John has served the planning commission from 2018 to 2022, earlier this year, and both have made a huge impact on the planning commission. And both come to it, like all of you, with the sincerest of intentions. You know, Judy has such heart for her community and the process of the Planning Commission and years of being, you know, in this meeting room once a month or more, deciding on things that affect our community. And engaging with her colleagues on the Planning Commission, which over 15 years, there have been several, Rob Tubbs, Ted Henschel, just to name a couple, Louis Grollo,
You.
myself, that's right, that's right. And John Syke, when he was appointed in 2018, I was just reminding him that he was part of probably our largest cluster of applications. And I think we had about 12 applicants in that term or in that seeking a spot. And John clearly rose to the top with his experience and drive to serve the community. And Paul Gonzalez was in that group as well and took another seat right after with the next one that was vacant. And I am so happy to say, you know, in John's tenure on the Planning Commission, just an excellent, insightful, thoughtful feedback on the information and the proposals. And for myself, it was a little like E.F. Hutton. He's quiet, but I would wait to listen to what he said because he's always spent some time percolating it, and it was always good feedback with his experience. So I want to thank both of you guys because it is a lot of information, a lot of learning, and you've served the community well, and it's appreciated. There's no way to measure the appreciation adequately, and so I just wanted to convey that to you both, and look forward to new colleagues on the Planning Commission, one of which is not appointed yet, but I will be recommending appointment to the Planning Commission, to the Township Board at the next meeting, and that's Rhonda Wassam, and she is a pharmacist and involved in an officer in one of the local lake associations and lives in the Spider Lake area. And so I think that she will be an excellent addition too. And I think board members, I'm not sure why they would find any other reason not to appoint her, so I look forward to that. But thanks for letting me take the time to thank these two stellar individuals for their service. Really appreciate it.
It's been our pleasure.
Thank you.
Good evening, John Syke, 507 Devonshire Court, and thank you Supervisor Friend for your comments. I just wanted to express my thanks to the Planning Commission allowing to serve side by side with you over the last few years. And unfortunately, my departure wasn't the way I planned, but sometimes that's where life takes you. So I just wanted to take this moment to really just say thanks for everybody. We have a great staff here. Thank you, Claire, and as well as the Township Board. It's been a real privilege to serve the people of East Bay Township over the last few years. And since I have this kind of public forum here, I do want to thank, sorry, I just want to thank the, excuse me. Everything gets spit out now. Grand Traverse 911, Metro Fire, and East Bay Ambulance. We all know they're important people. And when you got to rely on them, glad they're there. So I just wanted to use this as a public forum for that as well. So sorry to get emotional on this.
Yep.
But thank you. And I'll be around. I'll be working with Claire, Garfield. So look forward to keeping in touch with you all. So thank you.
Thank you for your comments. All right. Oh, yes, other public comment.
This is just a positive announcement, quick positive. Scott, 1902 North Avenue. And thanks to the commission for all the work you do. Judy, we will miss you. So congratulations, Paul, as well. Some little positive piece of news. We've been working pretty hard on Arbutus to protect 120 acres called Turtle Cove. We're working with the Grand Traverse Land Commission and have raised about 3/5 of the money already on our way toward $2.4 million to protect it. A huge sensitive wetland area, Turtle Cove there in Lake 4. So I know you all do a lot of work and working hard to protect through wise development, which isn't always easy. But this is a piece that we can protect 100-year-old forests forever. So I just wanted to make that public announcement here at this forum because I thought it was appropriate, and wanted to thank everyone who's been involved. And I think we're going to make it. We have to decide by September whether to opt. The Cowles have made that option to the Conservancy at a discount. So we're really excited by it and wanted to let the commission know that, if you didn't know already, and make it part of public record. Thank you.
Thank you. Quite an accomplishment. Okay. Any other public comment out there? Okay. All right, well, moving forward, we'll jump into correspondence. We've got quite a bit in our packet, but Claire, anything new that we need to be aware of?
There was that was included in your packet. There's also on your desk an email from Commissioner Nemitz. There was public comment related to the proposed amendment from the Watershed Center and also from Steve Largent, Township Representative, as well as employee at the Grand Traverse Conservation District. And then I also had some proposed building plans for the Blue Water View that were sent in after the packet went out.
Okay.
Put those on your tables as well.
Got it. Thank you. Any questions on any correspondence, commissioners? Okay. We'll move on to item number 8 under reports, Township Board. Mindy.
A couple things that were at the last meeting. We approved the request for a proposal to go out for the 3-mile trail. So I know that that's been posted, so if anybody wants to look at that is out there. And also with the election committee, I don't know if anybody noticed, but there's a new ballot box out front. That is for, and make sure that if you want an absentee ballot registration, you get it with the township clerk, and she can get you an absentee ballot. There's also going to be a box, though it's not up yet, at Station 9 out front. So if you are on this side of town, on this side of the township, you can drop off either your absentee ballot application or your ballot at either of those locations. The other thing is that if you would like to work the election, there's opportunities available to work the election, whether it's in East Bay or it's in any of your other local communities, but they are looking for election workers.
Got it. Thank you. Any questions for Mindy? All right, Paul.
Yeah, at the last ZBA meeting, we approved the variance for the Hyatt House, which was a TC Hospitality Partners, for a second entrance that was within the 400 feet.
Gotcha.
Right.
Great, thank you. And last but not least, Claire.
The master plan is officially out for the 63-day public comment period. All comments will be collected and presented to the Planning Commission, so we will be scheduling a public hearing in September. It'll be a little bit over that 63 days, but the public hearing will be held. You'll review all of the public comment that comes in and kind of move forward with. Generally, what happens is you would not adopt the plan at that meeting. You'd review all the public comment. You'd listen to additional public comment, maybe make some recommendations for changes, and then the master plan would generally be adopted at a subsequent meeting. The zoning ordinance, that was out for RFP. We received 4 proposals, pretty high-quality proposals from 4 different consulting firms. We've got a selection committee that's going to be meeting next Monday to review those proposals. We've got Dan Leonard is going to be representing Planning Commission. We also have ZBA member, our legal counsel, as well as staff is going to be reviewing the proposals and looking to make a recommendation for a firm to the Township Board at the August meeting. There was a minor amendment to the approved site plan for TC Hyatt House, and our ordinance basically allows staff to make administrative approvals of a minor amendment, which is defined in the ordinance, but it's generally anything that's less than 10% change. So TC Hyatt House was at 74 feet. They're looking to go up to 76. Our ordinance allows up to 80 with an increase in open space, so they are seeking, I approved an additional 2 feet with an increase in open space of 1%. So that was a minor amendment that was approved. And I think that's it. And Judy, what's there?
Yeah, I have a few things. I'm just wondering, do you think that in the future you'll be revisiting the tree ordinance thing that the committee and where that went with?
Absolutely,
Okay.
yep. And that's part of the zoning ordinance rewrite. And so I've got basically the planning commission took the recommendations from that subcommittee, and we've got some draft language right now, which I think is in very good shape. And so that will be shared with the consultant firm that will be rewriting the whole ordinance and taking those recommendations into the update.
Okay, and then the other, just two more things. So we also talked about establishing some sort of ordinary high water mark on on some of the lakes, and either working with the watershed or people with knowledge of how to do that in our community. Do you think that that is something on the table still?
So right now, what we're doing is we're requiring a survey for any new approval. So that's kind of the gold standard.
Okay.
In talking with our legal counsel, I've spoken numerous times with the Watershed Center as well as our engineer. We're trying to figure out if there's some methodology that we can use to reduce costs for consultants that would establish an elevation that would basically be a certain number of feet from the existing water level at each one of the inland lakes. That would be, that maybe the township or some entity would pay a consultant to go out and do. The Watershed Center hasn't been doesn't have an individual in mind that's got that expertise, but that's something we're looking at as a way to reduce costs for an applicant, an individual homeowner that's looking to make an improvement. But right now, we're just requiring a survey. So that's kind of where we're at right now.
So what you're saying is that the survey would,
Accurately, we require that ordinary high water mark is shown by a certified
the survey.
surveyor. It's not, so we don't accept the water line or the water's edge, or it needs to be the ordinary high water mark as defined by a licensed surveyor.
right, so then how will we, I mean, this is maybe something to discuss further. How would we determine if a person is in violation of the Lakes overlay or of the Boardman overlay or of the Mitchell Creek overlay? If, would they have to hire a surveyor?
Yes, for a
Okay.
site plan approval.
Okay, what I'm asking is that, let's say that someone is in violation of that, then you would make the property owner of the overlay, because the overlay says, you can only do certain things 50 feet back from the ordinary high water mark.
She's saying for somebody that didn't come in for
Yeah.
approval, just did it.
They would need a land use permit to put any of those structures, anything within that.
Well, the
50-foot
removal of
setback.
trees or anything like that, too.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I guess,
And that's another thing, is that we're working to have our zoning administrator trained. We have some Eagle videos that show the methodology
Yes.
for determining the ordinary high water mark. And so that's a skill set that we're working on.
Okay.
Having in-house that we can go out and make those determinations.
so that's kind of still on the table, too. And then the last thing, I noticed that the past, one of the ZBA meetings dealt with it, too, and we just dealt with it kind of with Sugar Beach, too, defining marinas and all what that meant, do you think that that'll be something, defining livery services and renting to the public or guests at places versus, will those be things that you think are kind of on the hot button table?
I think as a part of the zoning ordinance update, we have a lot of definitions that need clarity. Every single use that we allow in the ordinance needs to have a definition. And right now, a lot of uses that we allow, either through special land use permit or permitted by right, don't have a definition that corresponds, and so that's absolutely going to be part of our process.
All right, thank you. Thank you for the update.
Awesome, thank you. Okay. Any other questions for Claire, first of all? Okay. Moving on to item number 9. First thing on the business for the planning commission is election of chairperson and secretary, but we'll do the chairperson first. That's what we've got on here. And again, we generally do our election of officers in September. So this is a temporary role for August and July, I suppose, at this point. But any takers? Me?
I just have a question regarding, oh, go ahead.
Well, nomination, Dan Leonard for nomination for the July and August meetings for chairman.
So then we have to
So you
do
have to
vice
make a-
chair.
Then we have to do vice chair.
This requires a motion, I take it?
Probably a second first.
You can do
Well,
all
I'm
of
just,
it.
Sure. Do we want to do the secretary too? Like we can lump them all in? Because we're going to have to do the shuffle. Maybe this is a Brian question, honestly. Brian, should we do these individually? Meaning appoint someone individually?
That's a function of the planning commission's desires. If they are both comfortable or doing it both positions in the same motion, you can do that. If you want to do them separately, you can do that as well.
Okay. Thank you.
Did you make a motion?
I made a nomination and a motion, yes,
I'll
for,
support that.
Okay. So
So we're going to do them individually.
we'll do it individually. We'll go.
well, we can't have a vice chair until it's vacant.
Right. Okay, so we got a motion by Paul, seconded by Mindy, to have myself continue to be the planning commission chair for July and August. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed? Thank you.
Now we gotta do a vice chair.
So now we need a vice chair.
I would nominate Mindy Walters to be the, you can't do it because you're on the trustees? Okay, I thought you could. It was just chair.
I have in the past, but
Yeah.
it's been recommended I don't.
Okay, I withdraw that.
Okay.
Can Paul, because he's part of ZBA, I mean, he's part of this commission, right? Paul could be.
Yeah, Paul could.
Sure.
I'll nominate Paul for the vice chair
I'll
position
second
of the
that.
planning commission.
Thank you.
Second?
Okay, we got a motion by Mindy, seconded by Judy. Have Paul be vice chair of the planning commission. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Welcome, Paul, to the VG.
Thank you.
Heads up.
Standing in the wings, Harry.
Yes. And then lastly, the secretary. We've added that to the list. Any nominations for secretary?
Oh, come on now, don't jump at the job.
Nominate Call, secretary.
I'll support.
The only question is, I really have horrible handwriting, that I can't read it myself. Can I take all my notes on a laptop?
Sure, you
Sure.
can record it on your phone.
Okay.
No?
That's fine.
I would bet Ann would appreciate that. Send you, never mind. We'll figure it out. But yes, I think we can do that electronically. So we have a nomination, a motion, and a second for Carl to be the secretary. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. Okay.
I just have a question regarding the bylaws. Is everybody's term, whether it's 1 year or 3 years, always up like July? No, they stagger the months? Okay, so that's why we have election in September, because not everybody has the same appointment.
We have all of the terms ending the end of July, except the elected official ends when their term ends. Or transitions.
So how can the
Yeah.
the voting be in September when the term ends in July? I'm confused.
Because then we're going to run into this situation.
Isn't there a gap?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good question, and we don't have anything in our bylaws that state when terms
Right.
begin and end. They just all are in the July cycle, and so there's, basically the way it's staggered is that it's 3-year terms, and so 2 are up every year, so that we don't have a lot of turnover on the planning commission at one time. So I think that's something that we could look into. The bylaws require that the chair, vice chair, and secretary are voted on annually in September. So the July is not part of our bylaws.
Right, but if in the future, the planning commission wanted to amend that, they could, right, with a 2/3 vote?
Could amend the bylaws?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so just a question for y'all, because then you run into the gap, but I don't know if that's good or bad. It's up to you.
So in other words, when we run into a situation like yourself leaving, or John, we have to do this each time to fill the gap? Okay,
For a couple of months.
okay. Does that make sense?
The only position that really specifies what you do is in the chairperson.
Right, I read that in the Bible.
That's the only one. And then as far as what happens with the vice chair and the secretary, it's not covered, so.
So something we can consider, maybe look at when we're going through the zoning ordinance amendment. I mean, we could maybe look at just timing. It'd be nice to have a third party have a look at that, and just figure out how to lay it all out. Just so that we don't have that gap annually. It's a
Absolutely,
little
yeah.
goofy.
I think it would be a 1 month, it would be just the month of August where we would generally have a gap because the terms go through the end of July. But we can definitely look at that.
Okay. Thanks. And for the next exciting piece of business, the selection of a PC member to serve on the zoning ordinance update group. Are there any takers for that?
You want me to give just a quick overview of
Yes,
the
please. Yes,
role
please.
involved?
Yes.
So what we're anticipating is because the zoning ordinance update, it's going to be heavily reliant on the master plan, the public input that we receive through the master plan process. And so what I anticipate is that there's going to be a working committee made up of a representative from the Zoning Board of Appeals, the Planning Commission, there will be staff, and then our legal counsel is going to be working closely with us. And so that group will be meeting, I don't know the frequency, but I would say it could be monthly, but when the consultant is working, kind of just working through the language, it might be less than monthly, just as we wait for having kind of a draft to review. So any drafts that are, the working group will be reviewing kind of preliminary drafts before they come in front of the planning commission. So everything will come in front of the planning commission, but this would be somebody that was working kind of with the consultant as draft language is first being fleshed out and presented to this working group.
Would that generally take place like during just normal business hours?
We could be flexible. I anticipate that it would be either beginning of the day or end of the day, so maybe during normal business. I've found that like an 8 a.m. meeting or a 4 p.m. meeting generally works well for people who are working as well as people that are looking to reduce night meetings, but we're absolutely flexible based on what works well for that committee working group member. And the timeline is about 12 to 18 months that we'd be working through this process. But again, I anticipate that it would not be monthly, it would be not quite monthly meetings.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
I've got the most flexible schedule of everybody here, so.
So is that customary? Is there normally a public, is there anybody at large usually from the public on these committees? I'm just wondering.
And, we could look at that. I've seen in other communities that it's oftentimes staff and committee members and then bringing it in front of the public board meetings.
I know, just a suggestion.
But that's
That's
something we
fine, I'm
could
just
certainly
throwing
look
it out
at.
there.
Why you want to do it?
That's
What I heard.
That's
I
kind of,
heard that. That's what I heard, sorry.
nothing like extra.
I heard somebody just
Discussion underneath
chisel
the
out their
table, let's
position
plan
here.
someday, I guess.
You'd be good.
I mean, at this point, Paul, yeah, I'm out. Paul, I love your suggestion.
Yeah, I love Paul's suggestion too.
Yes.
Motion, or is it a?
I would move to nominate.
Don't make it official.
Paul Gonzalez to serve on the ordinance
Review.
update, zoning ordinance update working group.
Okay.
I'll support.
Okay. Motion by Judy, seconded by Renee, to have Paul be on the zoning ordinance update working group. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
And I'd be curious, just planning commission feedback
approved.
for this working group about membership, if you think it would be helpful to have a representative from the public.
I think we need a representative from the public, and I also think we need a business leader.
Business representative? Okay,
I think that's a good idea.
I would vote for that.
okay. That sounds good, because the planning commission is really going to be the entity that's using the zoning ordinance the most. The ZBA it uses it a little bit less frequent. The board uses it, but a little bit less frequent. But this is really going to be a working document for you, so I think.
I think it'd be great to have a developer on it.
Yep.
Developer, okay.
Perspective of it.
Okay, yep,
You
that
know,
sounds
how to
good.
make it easier to use, but still get what we want out of it.
Dylan Pablo, too.
Pablo? He's already on.
Seriously.
He's already, he will be reviewing
Okay.
to make sure that and that, just for your background, we have some funding from MEDC, the Redevelopment Ready Communities, for the zoning ordinance update. And so part of that process is making sure that we're in line with the best practices. And so they've been kind of reviewing the RFP that we sent out, as well as they reviewed our existing ordinance to identify gaps in the zoning.
I think, would you be like taking, I know we talked a lot about the zoning, and we have 14 lakes and parks within that area too. I don't want to make this really big, but there are entities with short-term rentals, and there's a lot of things going on there that input might be necessary too. But, you don't want to get too big, but you also
Yeah.
want to make sure that you're not creating hot buttons.
So I think one piece that's not this working group, but it's going to be reconvening a working group of Forest Lakes Overlay District. And so we have a group with representatives from the lakes, each lake association, as well as some other, that we convened when we were looking at what was the issue? We were looking at the permeable pavers.
Yeah, permeable pavers.
And so that was a group that we will
Okay.
be planning to reconvene as we look for any potential changes to the Forest Lakes Overlay District.
Okay, thank you. Next on the docket is the possible zoning amendment, 2-22 Stream Crossing Bridge. Yeah, Claire, maybe you could kick us off, just give us a little overview. It's just kind of a check-in from last month. I know we've got some proposed language here. Yeah,
Yep, and we've got Brian Graham, our township attorney, here to go over the proposed language with you. So recall that in June, the Planning Commission discussed the possible amendment to the zoning ordinance. This is to allow for non-motorized crossings of the stream. We discussed a little bit what is the definition of non-motorized. This would likely extend to electric bikes or scooters, what you traditionally would see on a non-motorized trail like the TART trail system. So the language was drafted by legal counsel. You've got in your packet comments from the Conservation Resource Alliance, as well as Watershed Center and Steve Largent. There's a couple items that the Planning Commission may want to consider, and we can discuss those after Brian Graham has gone through his edits. And just one thing that I wanted to mention to you, Dan, is that I think we have a few members of the public here to provide comment on this. So you can, that's your decision if you want to do it now or at the end of the meeting.
okay. Maybe just to, I'd like to invite our guests here if we've already kind of had the conversation about it. So maybe just to kind of introduce some other clarity, because this is kind of a specific targeted area that we're looking at. I'd be happy to entertain that. So if there are members that are looking to comment or have question on this amendment, feel free to step on up. This is
Hi, everybody. Chris Garrock, this is on. I'm the Director of Stewardship at the Grand Traverse Regional Land Conservancy. Our future office will be right down the road here at 2846 3 Mile Road. And although I no longer live in East Bay Township, I grew up on 1930 Potter Road, so this place is very near and dear to me. My comment or question for you guys, or something for you to consider as you're going through this process, I've reviewed a lot of the draft language, and I think that you guys are heading in a great direction and making a lot of critical improvements to the ordinance to really protect the stream health. The one thing that I would ask you guys to consider is the bridge location language you have in there, specifically for our property and our trail system that we're looking at. We do have a couple of existing crossings from the former golf course that are within, I guess, not 1,000 feet apart, that we are looking at improving and utilizing those existing footprints. Right now, it's an old wooden bridge with some concrete abutments. Our current trail system that we're proposing would remove those concrete abutments and utilize a boardwalk crossing with some helical piles, and our engineers could speak to that a lot better than I can, but would establish a crossing that would reestablish that 1.5 times bank full width, which I believe is recommended by CRA and the Watershed Center as the recommended width to protect the integrity of that stream. So that's the one thing that's on my mind in terms of the proposed language right now. I think that there might be some other members of the public that might have additional comments, but otherwise, I think what you guys have proposed is looking really, really good. I'm excited to see the changes go in place, but again, as you are looking at the amendment here and addressing these issues, that's the one thing I'd like to see you guys comment on or give some thought to, those pre-existing structures and what maybe grandfathering in those things might look like, if that's an option that you guys are willing to consider.
Sure. No, thank you. Appreciate it. I know this isn't a public hearing, but I've opened up the gate. We might as well flush it out. Is there anybody else?
I'm Dallas Wirtz. I work at Gosling Zubak on Business Park Drive, and we're helping the Conservancy with these trail developments. And there are a couple existing bridges that are restricting the creek flow, and one of the locations in the concrete abutments that are existing out there have been there since the 80s or 90s, I believe, and the proposed bridges would be less wide, and the abutments for those would be helical piles, so they would be less invasive for the creek. We would be eliminating the concrete abutments that are there, opening the flow of the creek, which is always permitted and desirable by Eagle to help restore the corridor that's there. And so the abutments would be beyond the creek edge, which is what you see out there. So I believe if I read the original ordinance appropriately, we would have successfully been able to put an aggregate trail up to that bridge and retrofit that bridge, but the solution would allow for less invasive approach by building a boardwalk that sits on the land as opposed to filling in a wetland up to the creek.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Good evening, Caitlin Valinsky, Arbutus Lake. I'm concerned about removing concrete and asphalt driveways from the definition of structure. How would the 50-foot setback in the lakes area still be protected? There's been a lot of gray area on this topic as well as others, and retaining walls have recently been permitted in the 50-foot since they are technically not a structure. If you choose to remove concrete and asphalt driveways from the structure definition, please include verbiage that would still not be permitted in the 50-foot setback of the lakes area and other sensitive watershed areas. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay. Kind of want to bring it back to the commission just for like clarity. Let's go through this. Let's kind of address that. And Claire, I know you've maybe had some other conversations with the folks here. Could you provide a little background on where exactly you think we should be weaving this, or at least flushing out some of this comment?
You know, I would turn it over to Brian Graham,
Okay.
our attorney, just because he's here and he's got some expertise, and he drafted this language based on the conversation with the Planning Commission at the last meeting. So I would defer to him.
Well, I think this a proposed amendment is pretty straightforward. The way I organize amendments is based on the organizational structure of your ordinance. So I go kind of chronologically throughout your ordinance. So I added a new section 2.138. I call it a stream crossing bridge because you really can't call it a pedestrian bridge, because you're allowing certain types of vehicles that are commonly used on trails, but they're really not a pedestrian. They're not on foot traffic. So that's the reason for the stream crossing bridge. Paragraph 1 of the standards is trying to articulate the various modes of transportation that would be permitted on the stream crossing bridge. I then added at the very end of that subparagraph, and similar modes of transportation customarily used on non-motorized trails. When you look at a zoning ordinance, Michigan law requires that ordinance be interpreted under the rules of statutory construction. Courts have very plainly said that when you have a series of items listed in a statute or an ordinance, and then you have a generalized phrase at the end, things that go within the generalized phrase are of the same category as those items listed. So that's the reason for that. Number 2, I didn't think it was appropriate to put abutments within the streams. You obviously want to make sure that those streams are free-flowing. In terms of existing bridges, to the extent that there are abutments already in the creeks, those are going to be allowed to continue as a non-conforming use or structure. Claire said you really wanted the bridge perpendicular. We talked about the bridge deck being no more than 12 feet, constructed of wood with spaces in between the boards so water can flow through that. We didn't know how else to address that particular issue. And Claire also thought it was appropriate to have pathways leading up to the bridge. Again, being not parallel to the stream, but basically leading directly to the bridge. Number 7, I added that one bridge per lot or 1,000 feet. I had difficulties with that. If I have a series of lots and I strictly went with the 1,000-foot spacing requirement, who's to say who's going to be entitled to the bridge? And so I thought that was problematic, to be honest with you. So that's why I listed it one bridge per lot or the 1,000 feet. Section 2 of the amendment, I basically repeated the same language of the current footnotes. I then just made an exception to that for the stream crossing bridge constructed pursuant to the standards of 238. If there's any desire to change those footnotes, that was not part of my marching orders in terms of the scope of the amendment, but we can easily make those changes. Section 3, that footnote was different than the others, and that's why I separated that. Section 4 is basically just adding the definition of a stream crossing bridge. When you're dealing with a definition, it should merely describe the structure and should not provide regulations. I also amended the definition of a structure. I want to address the comment that was made. what I added at the end of that section, a structure shall not include a concrete or asphalt driveway. So you need to make sure that you're not taking concrete and asphalt in all forms, but in fact as a driveway. If you have a structure, obviously an asphalt or a concrete driveway would fall within the definition because it's something constructed, requires it's man-made, it's on the ground. If you don't make that exception, then technically a concrete driveway must end at the front setback line before it gets to the public pavement. And I didn't think that was appropriate to have a concrete or an asphalt driveway that's mostly asphalt or mostly concrete, but yet then has a gap in the front setback area. That didn't make any sense to me. And so that's the purpose of that exception. But we're not accepting all asphalt and we're not accepting all concrete, but only driveways. You look at the language. We also accepted the pathways going up and actually the bridge itself. So that's the reason for the change in the definition of a structure.
Okay, thank you for that clarity, Brian.
Could I make just two quick comments?
Sure.
Just to add on. I think that we can take a look at structure and make sure that similarly to the referencing section 238, ensure that asphalt, concrete is outside of that 50-foot setback in the Forest Lakes Overlay District. So I think that would be probably, and we can work with Brian to make sure that any amendment to the definition of structure. The other thing that I just wanted to mention, and that was in talking with TART, was that that 3-mile trail is part of the reason that we're taking a look at this ordinance, and it sounds like the AASHTO standards, which is kind of the what does that stand for, Mindy? American Association of Surface.
Highway Transport
Yeah.
Officials.
And that, based on funding sources that we're looking at, could be up to 14 feet in width. And so again, you don't want to make ordinances for a specific project, but right now we've got it at 12 feet and potentially, it sounds like a regional trail system such as the TART Trail would be potentially up to 14 feet in width. So I just wanted to mention that as well.
So in that, could we just, so like as an example, under number 4, could we just state that excuse me. Acronym, thank you. Could we just say in compliance with them in terms of the width? I mean, I'd rather defer to language that's already out there rather than us come up with an arbitrary number.
So the problem you have is from an enforcement perspective. If you don't be specific, then when you're going to enforce the ordinance for a violation, what are we going to tell the court is the actual requirement?
Whatever the federal guideline is?
So you got to avoid what I call fuzzy language because of enforcement issues.
But it would, and I'm just thinking through, we're having this out right here. But when I look at parking standards for, ADA compliance, that hasn't changed, but I suppose that it could. We could run into a similar situation. I'm just thinking, would it be in our best interest to just say 14 if we know that that's the guideline today that we're going to run into, or is 12, are we going to run into an issue with 12 in the future?
I prefer a specific number, and if that number needs to change in the future, you amend the ordinance.
Well, the width was one that I had in my mind, was where did that 12 come from?
That's what I was just wondering.
Right?
I know that AASHTO standards have been 12 for a number of years. A lot of the grants that I've worked on for trails, that has been the standard. I don't know if they've changed recently to go up to 14, but 12 has been a standard for funding, to get funding from MDOT, TAP program, and others. But is there a problem with going with 14? Do we then let in, just because it seems that we have specific enough language in other parts of this proposed ordinance where we wouldn't get into a problem going to 14? But I could be corrected.
And my understanding, and I don't have expertise in the AASHTO standards, is that that the asphalt trails are 12, but the bridges are oftentimes 14. I think that's where that number came from. I think the original was 12 based on AASHTO standards, but it sounds like the bridges need to be wider.
I don't have a problem with going to 14, but I don't know how other people feel.
No, I don't either.
I say we double check the AASHTO standard, and if the AASHTO standard is 14 for bridges, I say we make it 14 for bridges.
Well, let me, if I can jump in. Number 4 talks about the deck being no more than 12 feet. So is there a desire to make a minimum that it can be no less than X and no more than Y? Because right now, technically under that language, a bridge decking that's 10 feet wide is in compliance with that language.
I don't think a minimum we should put, because if private property owners need to do it for something and they want it a foot wide, then they could have it.
Okay, I just want to make sure that we're aware that that language is not providing a minimum, but is basically providing a maximum width.
Right, right.
That's what I would do.
Yeah, so we can just make that a point to clarify before we come back because that, just for the public's knowledge, this is not the public hearing. We're just kind of, debating the language right now before we set the table for the public hearing. So you'll get another crack to look at it and have comment and feedback. This is not the final. We're just kind of getting there, teeing ourselves up. I'm going to throw one more thing out that I noticed, and that was just the construction. We specifically call out construction of wood under number 5 there. And I'm just thinking, are we setting ourselves up for debate when somebody brings in something that's not wood? Technology changes. We've got plastic, different, things that are out there for longer maintenance, we'll just say terms. Is there any feedback from the crew on that? Or any way that we can open that up?
Well, when we talked about the lakes area and the stairs, we talked about non-reflective materials. I don't know if that's appropriate, or if we've had problems with that terminology and how to enforce what's non-reflective and what is or isn't.
What do you mean by non-reflective material?
Like corrugated metal that reflects, aluminum, bright aluminum that people are putting on everything. And then also, I think we've talked about it's got to be pervious to a point. So if you use Trex, there is a pervious part to that, because they do clip together, but, so it's got to be that. And when working with Brown Bridge, since we did 2 bridges there, I have a few things too from that experience to relate to, but we're talking about a reflective corrugated aluminum type things too, that docks are sometimes made out of, and then that sheeting. So I think that's a really good thing not to have reflective materials.
Yeah, I'm open to any of that. So if Claire can give me some ideas of those type materials, we can easily make that change.
Any other questions that are out there, or clarifications?
I have number 1, and it says individuals on foot. Does that refer to animals? Because this does refer to people walk dogs. And in addition, this is in the ag district, so if I want to take my sheep across the bridge, can I do that? And my cows?
That's up to you guys as to what.
Okay, so I'm just bringing that up, because we talk about segways and skateboards, but we forget our animal friends. And I don't know if an individual is an animal. The other part, so we want to have that defined. In working with Brown Bridge on 2 bridges, the anchoring of the upland and looking at the designated flood levels, I don't know what those are on those streams, and I think we really have to be cognizant of that because floodplain is really important. The height of the bridge has to be very important too because of allowing floating debris and ice dams. We're not only dealing with small flowing, we have woody debris that goes in there and collect, so I think in looking at some ordinances regarding that. Also, with the abutments, we need to really think about erosion. We've dealt with erosion constantly out at Brown Bridge and things like that. So we've really got to, every stream is different, and water's going to go where water wants to go. So we really need to look at that. We need to look at the span, the snow and the ice load. We're not even talking about loads. I mean, if I'm taking my cattle across the bridge, and driving a Segway, that's a lot heavier than me on foot. I mean, are we gonna get into that, and somebody falls through a bridge, and we don't even have anything about railings? You know, I know at Brown Bridge, we had to have railings much higher than the 33 to 38 inch. You know, they're up there, depending on the height. Soils probably dictate the abutments and the erosions. Would we require an engineering review, Eagle, those types of things?
Yeah,
Okay,
those
go
are
ahead.
all good points, and I can respond to a few of those. So
Okay.
I checked in with Eagle, with Conservation Resource Alliance, with Grand Traverse County Building Department, with our township engineer, and kind of what I found out was that between, so building code, it sounds like does not permit the pedestrian bridges, so those are built and designed and approved by Eagle. So according to Conservation Resource Alliance, they said the crossing would meet the Eagle requirements of spanning Bankfull Channel width and accommodation of the 100-year flow event. So from their perspective, the state requirements would be sufficient for the actual construction design of the bridge. We can absolutely have some, specific standards, but from their perspective, they felt that agency review would be sufficient to protect
So we would
the
state
river and the-
that, though, in the ordinance, right? That we'd have to have Eagle review and,
Well, that would be
Required.
Eagle required.
Okay.
Review would be required for any
Right.
land use permit, and so that's stated elsewhere, wouldn't need to be stated in this section of the ordinance.
and I know we have, again, we have so many different zoning districts, as Section 2 does say here. And the ag district is an entirely different, and there are streams in those districts, I believe. And so, do we know if Eagle, because taking your herd of cows across the bridge is a totally different thing than pedestrian load, so do we know if Eagle deals with that?
Yeah, I could look into that. I mean, I know that any non-commercial agricultural activity or structure would still be subject to, in agricultural land would still be subject to all of the same, requirements, zoning requirements,
Right.
but we can look to see what could be potentially preempted by the Right to Farm Act.
Okay, yeah.
And that would need to be a commercial agriculture activity.
Yeah, so I think that,
And that's something that zoning would not, that
right,
understanding would not.
so, and then also, I think doesn't our zoning language in the overlays, doesn't that talk about the ordinary high water mark and the not said water? I'm not sure what said water means. Could someone define that for me, maybe? It says, the setback shall be a minimum of 50 feet from said water.
I think he's just referencing the previous phrase. Is that right?
We're a lot of joins.
Brian, did you hear that question?
I have no idea. All I did with this amendment is repeat the language of your current footnote language. We've not analyzed what that language is or means.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I know that we'll need to modify, there's a reference to the Brown Bridge Dam, and so we'll need to make a modification that it was the previous location of the Brown Bridge Dam.
Yeah.
And again, we're going to be looking at our whole zoning ordinance
Right.
very shortly, but we'll make that modification as well as take a look.
Yeah, and I think, too, we've had a lot of controversy in the area about dredging. And if people are making little canals in lakes areas, or dredging does come up where they're going to be building little footbridges across those. I mean, we've got to be really cognizant of that with, amendment, to amend this in section 405, 406, and 407. Are we letting footbridges be in those areas?
Well, those sections are, the footnote is currently referring back to any existing stream or tributary of Mitchell or Baker Creek, any locations within the overlay district existing. That's the footnote reference.
Okay, so I just want to be clear on this. So what's happening is that a person in any one of these districts could build a footbridge on their property. Is that correct?
That's my understanding, as long as it's constructed pursuant to 238.
Right, and so then I have a concern, because if people start dredging or making little bridges over stuff in 405, 406, and 407, that's a concern to me.
That's a policy choice by the commission,
Right.
whether you want those kinds of bridges in those districts. But I must say, though, there must be a rational basis to treat those districts differently than the other districts in order to survive a legal challenge.
Well, I think, isn't section 231 that rational district, and then the Brown Bridge, the Boardman River overlay, and wouldn't the overlays be that exception?
I cannot answer that. I have not analyzed everything that you've just mentioned.
Okay, just throwing it out there for discussion.
So before, yeah, so we're considering this, right? So maybe what we could have is just some inclusion in the ordinance areas where this would affect it in other zoning districts that these could be located in, just for other considerations, but what I'm hearing, Brian, is that regardless, whenever one of these is proposed to be built, they would have to come in and pull a land use permit, correct? So
Yes.
as that's taking place, that's where all these other regulated bodies come in to try and assist with the design and the placement and all that, or at least they are supposed to. The ones that are going to happen, unfortunately, on their own, I don't think we have any control over anyway, but I'm also want to be respectful of Judy's comments and just evaluating is there a way to try and get ahead of that? I think that's kind of where you're coming from, right?
And we don't mention that they can be built in the ag district, which is section 421 of our ordinance.
It's on the next page.
Is it on the next page? On
Yeah,
421?
section 3.
Okay, so we would amend that to talk about livestock.
Yes, Mindy.
Scooters are mentioned twice. I was wondering if one should be electric scooters. And then I have a lot of concerns. We've talked a lot about the definition of structure, and I think this is the perfect time to get all those other things into what is defined as a structure. I know that we talked about it in great detail when we were talking about the wedding venue off of Hammond that they wanted to do, and whether or not if they put a concrete pad down, if that was a structure or not, and, like the retaining walls and all their things. So I would like to really make sure that we cover all the structure questions. If we're going to spend the time to
While we're
revise
there.
the definition, I think we should look at that one a lot.
Right.
The only other question, I did like the railings question. I'm not sure that is going to be on the Eagle or not, but that's an OSHA thing, even though they're not our workers, right? They are the public, so at least there is something that tells you where the railing should be according to OSHA if it was a worker. The other, I lost my train of thought. Oh, I remember. Do we have a definition of what a stream is, or a tributary, or a depth for which that they can, what is it that we are allowing the bridges over? It says stream. I don't know if it's a named stream, or that kind of thing. Do we need to be specific about that at all? Just food for thought.
I did notice that your zoning ordinance does not define what a stream is. And so I think it's definitely appropriate to define what a stream is so you know where the bridge is going.
Yeah, I agree with that, because I think that might alleviate some of Judy's concerns too with somebody dredging something and, I now have a stream.
And it says stream crossing bridge in section 4, so if you identify what a stream is,
Well, an
then your
example,
dredging thing goes away.
an example that happened on the lake I'm on, a huge tree came down on the shoreline and created like a stream, a sinkhole, and the people built a bridge across it.
What if we named the particular streams that we're interested in? I mean,
Yeah.
A lot of this discussion came about because of the 3-mile trail. I mean, that was the genesis of this discussion, right?
And we have an overlay district, and we have the Mitchell Creek and Baker Creek overlay. And so we have on our zoning map those streams and some of the main primary tributaries mapped and identified as being subject to that overlay. But those obviously have a number of additional tributaries that are not shown on our zoning map, kind of in the headwaters area, as well as there's some unnamed streams.
Yeah. How could we go about essentially
So
defining which ones we're allowing this for?
And so right now, our ordinance prohibits any bridge crossing on any stream. And so that's kind of what the goal was, to address that.
Brian,
You
you-
only want to, if you only want to regulate certain streams and kind of leave the others.
How did you permit them at Brown Bridge?
I didn't.
I know you didn't, I'm sorry, I wasn't saying you, I didn't mean that, I meant, how did East
Yeah.
Bay Township permit the 2 bridges, because I believe at least one is in East Bay Township?
In the past, quite a few bridges have been built.
Okay,
Even with that zoning
I just wasn't
in
quite
place.
sure, I know that we worked immensely with Eagle and the whole shot, so, but I was just wondering.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Brian, I was going to say, you look like you had a comment.
I did. I have gone through, in fact, recently, a process with one of my other ZBAs when they were called upon to interpret what a stream was, okay? And so that ZBA basically made sure that in order to be a stream, that there had to be a continuous flow of water, okay? And the reasoning they use is if you did not have the continuous flow, then in a heavy rainstorm, you might get a temporary flow of water through a ditch, a road ditch. And they didn't think that was appropriate to be a stream because that was a temporary
Currents?
flow of water based on a heavy rain. So a continuous flow is trying to differentiate between what they considered a stream and just getting rid of water after a heavy rain.
So yeah, maybe that's something that we include in the definition.
So
In
would
terms of
an
an update.
artesian or spring be a continuous, I mean, it is a continuous flow of water, and that creates a stream, right?
It would go to, it could be a stream or a tree, yeah, because it's got to go somewhere.
Okay. Good enough. Thank you.
So I think it sounds like we've got a few things to consider before we move this thing forward. We have before us the ability tonight to make a motion to schedule for a public hearing. Personally, I think I'd like to see all of this again, kind of formalized. before we go to public hearing and kind of get it for the first time? Am I reading the tea leaves right? Would others like to do the same, or do we want to tee it up?
I'd like to see it again.
Okay,
We'll just see if
Personally,
there's an
I-
awful lot of tweaking yet.
I'd agree. How you feeling about it, Judy?
I feel great about it.
1 foot out the door.
No,
I know.
It's good discussion. Thank you,
Yes,
Dan.
yes. All right, anything else from any commissioners of things, topics that we need to address? Still out there tied to this?
The only other one that I was thinking, and maybe it's under the ego permitting, is the height of from the water level.
I'm trying to think it might be because of the debris in the ice dam type thing, but I haven't looked. That's a good Steve Largent question, and your engineer over there. It's not so much Tart or the engineers I'm worried about.
Okay, so again, I don't think we're going to take any action on this tonight, but if there's other elements of discussion, please follow up with Claire for those in the room who are interested. And because we'll bring this back, we'll have the conversation again once we got new materials. And Brian, thank you for the clarity. It was helpful having that perspective. Appreciate it.
All right. It was nice seeing everybody again. I'm going to leave unless you need me for something else.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay. Thanks for the conversation, everyone, and the public for stepping up and helping us kind of see some things we didn't see. Okay, we're going to move on to 9D. That is a sketch plan review for Blue Water View. And I'll turn it over to Claire to kind of kick us off on this.
Okay. So both of the next two items on the agenda are developers, applicants that are seeking guidance from the Planning Commission as to whether their proposed plans would be appropriate as a PUD, planned unit development. So just a refresher, as defined in the ordinance, a PUD is intended to accommodate developments with mixed or varied uses, having sites with unusual topography or unique settings within the community or on land which exhibits difficult and costly development problems. So for Blue Water View, I think we have applicant here today to, so for Blue Water View, just to give you a little bit of background, the proposal that you see in your packet, they're single-family lots, and they don't meet the minimum moderate-density residential lot width or size. So it's zone moderate-density residential. The density that the applicant is looking to develop at is moderate-density residential. However, they're looking to have single-family parcels. And so we discussed rezoning it to high-density residential, which would be supported by the future land use map. The future land use map identifies that parcel at 4 Mile and Hammond as up to 8 dwelling units per acre. But again, even with high-density residential, the parcel sizes that he's looking to make are too small, don't meet the high density. So to me, part of the issue is the zoning ordinance that might not be conducive to the type of residential development that the township's looking for. So I look at the Pine Grove community, those historic platted lots are 50 feet in width. Those are zoned low-density residential. However, our high-density residential district, the minimum width is 60 feet. So even those would not be allowed to be created as single-family parcel sizes under our high-density residential. So I guess I'm presenting this to you because, you know, the developer he's been coming in, you know, meeting with me for the past couple of years, trying to make this development work, trying to figure out if he wants to come in with a PUD, with a, you know, kind of a traditional site plan, site condo. And so, you know, I suggested, why don't you come in front of the Planning Commission? Unfortunately, he's not here tonight, and just get some feedback as to whether or not this would be an appropriate candidate for a PUD. Again, we don't want to use the PUD, you know, haphazardly, and so that was why I said that it would probably be good early in the process before you put a lot of, you know, costly investment into into the application to get some feedback. But, the developer is proposing some public and resident amenities that would be possible with these smaller lots, as opposed to, with a larger lot, there's really no public space. With this site plan that you're taking a look at, there is, a gazebo, there's open space. The proposal includes a non-motorized public pedestrian trail as well as a public sidewalk. So there's 30 units proposed right now. It's not clear to me whether the units up front along Hammond are going to be commercial or residential, and that's kind of indicated as Phase 2. And so that hasn't been defined yet. I really would like to see a connection to the Waterview Ridge, but and that clearly, the Waterview Ridge, clearly the intent was to connect to this parcel. Unfortunately, there was nothing recorded with the Register of Deeds at the time when Waterview Ridge was approved to ensure that connection happens. And so those two entities have been in discussions but haven't worked out in an agreeable connection at this time. And so our ordinance requires a connection for over 30 units, residential units, requires 2 entrance and exit points, but allows for only 1 if it's 30 units or less.
Yes, Mindy.
So, taking out this Phase 2 line and just assuming the whole thing at the same time, what does it do if those up front on Hammond Road are commercial?
Then it would need to be a PUD, because commercial is not permitted in the zoning district.
So, but what about access?
And that's part of this, that's part of the site plan that has not been, from my perspective, fleshed out.
And there's
so-
absolutely no parking for that stuff
Right,
in Hammond.
right.
And access would be on the approach to the roundabout if they did propose a second access, right?
No way.
Which is not going to work.
And I believe that they have been in discussions with the road commission, and so my understanding is that they're looking at access just off a 4 mile, which I believe would make that all residential. I don't think that they'd be looking to do commercial.
What is the width of these lots? And what is the setback between the 2 buildings? I can't read it, it's.
Yeah.
I wish the developer was here. I think they're under 60 feet, and I don't have, I wasn't provided a printed site plan, and so
So should we table this because there's not here for information?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think I'd like to just have a conversation regardless about the PUD question, though. Because that, to me, is what's looming, and it's a little bit of a Pandora's box, meaning if they were doing something unconventional, like, as an example, if they were clustering all these units and stacking them in a spot that they were actually providing some open space and, like, trying to preserve some land, as an example, and they were trying to do something unique based upon the land, like, that is a good use of the PUD, where we're providing kind of a compromise or a balance there. But this is basically a site condo.
Right.
They're all the same
It
use.
feels like the
It's all the s-
PUD would be simply used to get the smaller lots,
To get around the.
to get
Yeah.
around the ordinance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then-
Or like Claire said, if they were to propose commercial up front, but I just don't see how that could even be possible with that roundabout.
Well, and there's no parking.
Right.
Right.
Well, in the entrances, it just.
Yeah. And Claire, you pointed out appropriately, section 226 of the ordinance, where we talk about 35% being undeveloped, and space like that for the clusters. So there doesn't seem to be enough land for that kind of stuff.
Yeah, well, I
right?
think that it's
Or-
not a good candidate for
Yeah.
the cluster, the open
Okay.
space preservation, just because that clearly states that you need to be preserving a wetland or
Okay.
a public view shed, or, some very specific amenities and
Kind of a view,
ecological.
isn't it?
You wouldn't be able to see, it wouldn't be a public view, though.
Oh,
It
okay,
would only
I
be a
gotcha.
residential.
I got you. Okay.
So, Mr. Chair, what do you want to do?
I mean, to me, I agree. I think we should table it and have this with them, or have Claire communicate back to them kind of our light feedback, because we're not taking any action on it regardless. I mean, personally, I don't see why we would use the PUD tool in this situation. I still appreciate pointing out the density and the lot configuration that Claire brought up. But regardless, I don't think that this is a good use of that tool without having more information.
And
So-
maybe we take a look at the lot configuration, because to me, the high-density residential, having those minimum lot requirements it's not it doesn't facilitate high density. It doesn't facilitate the 8 dwelling units per acre that we're permitting. So I think that as a part of the zoning ordinance update, I would like to take a look at those minimum requirements and make sure that it's facilitating the densities that we're looking for.
I mean, it's definitely a very simple style. Never mind. I just think they could probably be a little more creative as to how they would configure this to maximize what they're trying to do. But yeah, I think we basically just move forward or move on. They're not here to discuss. So I don't think there's any action to really take at this point. But we do have one more on the docket this evening to talk through a sketch plan review, who is here. And that's with Holiday Forest. And so maybe let's move on to that item of business and talk through that. And Claire, maybe you can kick us off.
So as I'm sure most of you will recall, in September of 2021, the Planning Commission approved Holiday Forest 2, Phase 2, as a traditional condominium subdivision. You originally approved it for 25 units. I met with the applicant developer a couple weeks ago. They are looking to add an additional 9 units for a total of 34 units. And so, just to give you a little bit of context, the lot sizes that are proposed range inside from about 9,500 square feet, which is 0.22 acres, to about 13,000 square feet, which is 0.31 acres. So these sites are similar in size to the existing Holiday Forest, but some of them don't meet our minimum lot width or lot size requirement. The density that they're proposing is 2 dwelling units per acre. It's less than the maximum of 3 dwelling units per acre in low-density residential. So, and again, the reason that I brought this to the Planning Commission to get some very preliminary feedback on the PUD, we met with the applicant to discuss with the township engineer. Our engineer made a comment just at the meeting that there's a reason that the site hasn't been developed yet. It's got some pretty unique topographical challenges. And so the applicant is here seeking some feedback from the Planning Commission as to whether a planned unit development would be an appropriate tool to add some flexibility to the site design. So we've got Bill Crane and Bill Klaus both here.
Good evening. My name is Bill Klaus. I'm 68 years old, and I've been doing this for 46 years. Holiday Forest 2, we built Holiday Forest 1, I'm guessing 20-plus years ago, and we had Holiday Forest, the second phase, all designed as part of our submittal at that time, and the ordinance changed a couple times since then. Therefore, and the market has changed, housing types have changed, and I'm probably one of the few people in Grand Traverse County that develops a subdivision and then builds every home in it. And so we have laid out our...
I didn't build my house.
Well, I didn't say I did.
I live in Holiday Forest. You didn't build my house.
Okay. We have laid out all the homes that we intend to build in this development. And we know what we need, and what we had drafted in a preliminary fashion with 34 home sites would work ideally. Let's see. We're looking for relief on the width, area, and setback. The topography on that site is such that I have to go to the road commission to see if they will provide a variance so that we can put a county road there. And they told me that they enforce AASHTO standards, but AASHTO standards provide up to a 12% grade, but they limit theirs to a 7% grade on a road. So, got a little work there. May very well end up to be a private road, which you folks enforce the County Road Commission's private road standards, which allows up to a 10% grade. So that would work. We have a slope heading from the south, or the road, to the north on the interior of the loop that is far and away greater than 10%. I couldn't tell you exactly what it is, but you might see the topo lines there. And so our homes that we plan to build there range in depth from 34 feet to 26 feet. And so we need to soak up grade to be able to have that, and they're all going to be homes on that side of the road. They will likely all be homes that have garages where you drive under the house into the garage. That people call them a raised ranch. So that's likely what we'll have there. And we don't need or want the required minimum width, simply because it costs so much to put the road in, the sewer, the everything else, and to spread that across, how many lots could we get with the current ordinance, 25?
25.
To spread that across 25 lots makes it a walk-away project. There's no point in doing it. We have to put a lift station in that I would ideally love to put a private lift station in and have it taken care of by Butch Strait or somebody else that does that. But I guess we're required to have a public lift station, which costs a pile more money. And so the fewer lots we have, the less likely it's going to get developed. I had also hoped that we could reduce the front setback to 20 feet instead of 30, just so that we don't have to crowd up that hill to the north so hard and fast. Every foot seems to matter in that north side of the road. And if we do end up, if I can't accomplish anything with the road commission, if we do end up going to a private road, I'd really appreciate a 46-foot right-of-way. And we build lots of roads, lots of water, lots of sewer, and lots of homes. And what we had, I think what you're looking at that has the 34 sites is ideally what we would like to be able to build there.
Gotcha. All right, thank you. And I think we'll probably unless you want to ask, yeah. Go ahead, Mindy, sorry.
So on page 31 of our packet, there is what I believe to be an aerial photograph that was pulled off GIS with the property line on it. The property line on this is different than what is on these PUD plans. In fact, one of the lots is on the Holiday Forest 1 common area.
I can speak to that from my understanding. The image in your packet is accurate as far as our township records are concerned. The common area was part of the approval with Phase 1.
So am I right that lot 70 is in the common area of Holiday Forest?
No.
That's what my condo docs say.
Just so I'm looking at the right one, Mindy, could you tell me the unit number again on that?
I'm looking at page, figure, sheet C2, and I'm looking at unit 70.
Okay. That is helpful. Oh, I see exactly what you're saying.
Yeah, all that pies.
Mm-hmm. And that number 70 is included in the proposed 34 units that we're talking about?
Yeah, because it's in the PUD plan. This is the PUD plan.
Right.
In our township records, this was common area that was approved as part of phase 1. So there was a unit that was over here.
Bill, do our condo docs not reference what we're doing here?
They, from the records that we had, I guess, Bill Crane, Crane Engineering.
You need to come to the.
Yeah, come on up. Come on up.
Bill Crane, Crane Engineering, consultant for the project. The records that, I guess, I had from the condo docs, Anderson and Crane was the original surveying company that did the condo docs back when the original went in, which kind of showed this common area kind of a loop, but it doesn't go all the way to the easterly road. I guess we'll have to find that information and confirm it, but
I mean, I like this one better because there's more room behind my house, but that's not what my condo docs say.
I guess I'll have to look to see, but I think the question is what, over in this end here, correct?
Yeah.
By those 2 retention basins?
Yeah. I have a screenshot of my condo docs if you want to see it. The other thing is I have an issue with the 20-foot setback, as my truck would not fit in my driveway.
Keep in mind the 20-foot setbacks from the property line, the pavement mat would be 26 feet wide, 13 of which would be on the lot side.
My truck's 21 feet long.
Understood.
It still wouldn't fit in my driveway.
Your driveway goes from center line minus 13 foot to your garage.
Yeah, so the length of the driveway is not going to be 20 feet. The setback is from the right-of-way line, or an additional.
So it's 30 feet.
There's an additional, yeah, from the right-of-way to the edge of the asphalt is, yeah, so you're going to have right around 30 foot of driveway from edge of pavement to front of garage.
So for example, it was a 46-foot right-of-way. Half of that's 24, 13 feet of pavement from that is 11. 11 plus 20 is 31.
I'm really concerned about that setback. I think it's too shallow.
Okay.
I also am concerned about if you got too shallow of a setback and you're not getting your cars in your driveway because you made the driveway narrower, so you're using less asphalt and less concrete, that the people are going to be parking in the road, and then you're trying to get the road smaller. So now you got the cars in the road, you got the kids in the road, you got a steep grade. I'm very concerned about some of these changes.
Okay.
That's just me, I'm just one.
No, I agree, because we all know that people have other vehicles than cars. They have RVs, they have boats, they have lots of good stuff. And many boats are longer with a tongue on a trailer. We know they're longer than 21 foot. So I'm just, we're just kind of looking at what people have as stuff. And then, so I do agree with that. And I'm wondering, like, if you go underneath with a raised ranch and we have a 10% grade on pervious surfaces and it rains, that's going to be like our definition of a stream. So I think we really need to kind of think about that coming down and into somebody's garage and boom,
Sure.
then they'll be using their boat,
Sure.
maybe.
So this
Just
kind
FYI.
Yep. Any other feedback?
It is tricky out there, though. It is. I mean, we've
There
walked
is a
there.
great
Yeah.
challenge out there.
We were out
I
there.
admit
Definitely a
that.
great challenge out there.
So I guess the real question is, should we spend any energy or money looking at doing this on a, or approaching you on a PUD basis, or should we just put it away?
Well, and that's kind of what I was getting to, was the merit of the PUD, and we talked earlier about, you know, the intent is for financial considerations, which this you've just described, like 4 different individual physical ailments that are kind of encouraging that creative approach, as well as topographical challenges, no question. We all agree that it's a unique piece of dirt. I'm just, and I hope that we're using this as kind of more of a brainstorming session than anything, just to kind of throw other ideas out there. Is there a way to a mix of different product types? You've got all individual single-family homes.
On the north side of the loop, the only product that's gonna go there is the drive under, and that's so you can soak up the elevation left and right and forward to backward. That's it.
I guess what I was getting at is, could you do some duplexes that share a footprint to basically get a similar density calculation without all the lots?
Have you ever owned a duplex?
I'm not asking that, no.
And I haven't, and I won't.
Okay,
The one thing I will mention, just with a PUD, while there is some flexibility, we do want to stick as close to zoning as possible. And with this zoning designation, a low-density residential, low-density residential doesn't allow any other housing formats. Currently, we could amend our ordinance and allow some flexibility with duplexes, but right now, it's only single-family homes.
gotcha.
Duplexes are horribly hard to finance, and they're horribly hard to find somebody that wants. I mean, it's awful.
I don't think I'd want to see duplexes in that area. I
Common
mean,
walls are hard for,
I don't know.
Yeah, it's just not, from my perspective, it's nothing I'd invest any money in.
These lots, this 82 through 77 through 82, that is steep in there. That is really steep. Grade, steep. Those lots, I mean, there's a cliff off the back there. Don't worry.
Recognize that you go uphill from the back.
I know, I live at 20.
Okay.
We go sledding down the hill behind our house. You know,
I think we also have to be cognizant of, like, does this blend in with the existing neighborhoods and neighboring, what we want to create and continue? If it doesn't really kind of blend in, I think we have to consider that.
Yeah, and that was one reason that I looked at the size of the Holiday Forest Phase 1 to compare it to Phase 2, and it was interesting to note that these are pretty close in size to the Phase 1. But I believe that zoning had changed.
They're longer and narrower versus the wider though, aren't they?
Yeah, I think that was the biggest question, is that when Phase 1 went in, since then, the ordinance went to wider lots, to the 100-foot wide lot versus, I think it might have been 80 at that time, which kind of fits to what our proposal here is to go to an 80-foot wide lot to help with the proximity and the grades and the slopes.
My guess is it was 90, because they're all 90.
So realistically, the PUD conversation is to allow the development to financially float itself. I mean, at the end of the day, it's to maximize the density calculations to fit in more units, to make the product worthwhile. That's what I'm hearing.
It would cause it to make economic sense.
Yes, that's where we're saying the same thing, sorry. But that's where I'm going, and I'm just trying to think, the last time that we saw this, it was condominiumized, it was standardized based on what you could do under that set of standards. But a lot of things have shifted financially in the last couple of years significantly in the construction methods and costs and everything, so I can appreciate your concern. Is it the best use of the tool? I guess that's up. Is there any other feedback? I'd like to kind of just hear from everybody on this, just because I don't know. I'm a little torn. personally, I know that the property is very challenging. So to me, it is kind of a decent usage of the tool. In the back of my mind, it's like, are we fitting too much into a compact site?
My personal is that there are a lot of challenges on this site. There are too many challenges. Are we gonna have to go so far away from the zoning for that district to make this fit that this doesn't make sense?
Right. Right.
To change the road width, to change the setbacks, to change, the width of the sites, all these different things that we're trying to fit something into something that doesn't necessarily work.
Right.
So can I speak to the road width?
Absolutely. I'm not the chair.
When we do private roads, we pave 26 feet, 13-foot lanes each way. The County Road Commission has a 66-foot right-of-way standard. We do miles of roads with a 33-foot right-of-way. And our utility benches, for example, water and/or sewer, would have a 20-foot easement. And within that same easement, and we put that easement from edge of pavement, not edge of right-of-way. And so it compacts things nicely, and you can't see the water, you can't see the sewer other than for the hydrants on the water and the manholes in the sewer. But typically, you take a 20-foot easement, starting at the edge of pavement, which would be 13 feet from center line, and so that's 33 feet, which is the county road right-of-way requirement, but we have the utilities contained within it instead of outside of it. And it's just far and away more efficient. You've got your same ditches, your same stormwater controls, same everything's.
Sure. Well, and again, I guess the question's out is this the type of development that we want to use or exercise this tool on? Because this won't be the last time that it's used in this manner if we use it for this. That's the struggle that I think we're put into play. How flexible do we want to be, right?
I think you got to look at, the existing neighborhoods and really, again, go out, see if it really does fit. But then if you look at the PUD notes, as Commissioner Walters indicated, said, I'd like front setbacks, and we got to deal with that. And then I'd like set from 30 to 20, and then setbacks offset the measured from the building foundation, not the drip line. Then the roads, water, and sewer land from 25 to 34 homes, private lift station, and 40, and I'd like to have a 46-foot row for roads, and that type of, that type of thing, 26 pavement, 10 for ditches, right?
46-foot right-of-way.
Right.
13 pavement.
Because this says, this says 26 and 10.
Pavement.
10, that's what it says. So I think you have to figure, is that too much, or is it, where the bend is?
Right, right.
Another concern is that all these houses are gonna look identical. That's not what we have up there through there. All the houses are different. I know you're building 3 in a row right now that are the same, but every other house there's one here, there might be one here, and there might be one there, but there's 3 different ones in the middle, and these are not. These remind me of what the Ford housing looks like in Dearborn, if you will, where they're all the same.
Yeah, any other feedback from anybody?
So, Bill, are you basically saying that to do anything less than what you're proposing would not be financially?
I just give it to my kids.
Okay, that's what
I'd be done with it.
yeah,
I'm too old to fight.
right. But this, what I'm saying is this is what makes sense financially. Anything
It
less,
is.
yeah.
It's doable.
Well, to Mindy's point, I guess that's the one thing that kind of jumped out at me is that, yes, it's kind of mimicking, it's all the same construction, right? Or at least the footprints appear to be. Maybe there's some nuance to colors and design. Or do you have other styles? We've just got the
We've got
one print.
multiple styles, but I just had Bill use that particular footprint because that's the largest home that we would need to put there. That was a 1,400-foot main floor plan, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 2-car garage, nice open living dining kitchen. And that's the largest home that we would put there. We've got them at anywhere from, I think it's 1,008 feet on up to 1,400.
Okay.
And so I wanted to make sure whatever we wanted to do would fit within the confines of the setbacks and the building envelope that we would hopefully get approval from you folks.
And just for clarification, the building plans that you're looking at are for the Blue Water View. Those were provided by the previous
Yeah,
applicant.
that's super helpful. Thank you for that.
But there's three being built right now that are the same as this.
They're not. The three that were, wait a minute, lot 32 and lot 34 are drive-unders.
So is the one
The
in
other ones that
between.
we built are,
So is the one in between it that's already occupied. There are
yeah,
three in a
yeah,
row.
so it's
There's-
not being built, it's been built.
No, there's three in a row that are the same footprint.
Yes, you're right.
Where are those at?
They are 32, 33, and 34 on Yorkshire.
Gotcha.
33 has been there for 2 or 3 years. 32 is just a foundation right now, and 34 has a roof on but no siding, I think.
Well, I guess in the essence of time here, we've got kind of mixed signals. I think you can kind of read the tea leaves here. And again, we're all just individual voices here, but personally, I think it may be beneficial to see maybe some of the other types of product that could be offered in there, just as food for thought for us to consider to, and maybe you could do some of that in your modeling to try and help break up the consistency of it, just for visualization. I think that would go a long way. Maybe that would help. As far as other recommendations, just being as oddly situated as the property is, to me, I think the PUD tool is there to try and help encourage lots like this to be developed flexibly, but also, that's why I'm throwing things at you like duplexes or stacked units or combining units, doing a different product type. I'm just brainstorming here. I'm not trying to be the developer, but those are other things that we look at in applications of the PUD ordinance, just to kind of offer some flexibility to manage the growth in different areas of the land rather than use every square inch of it per se. I mean, I know that you've got open space calculations built into this, but just, I think that's my mental struggle is, you're, as a community and then as a developer, like, I think collectively, we all want to try to help see something happen there. It's just a matter of how do we not open Pandora's box by giving you, X, Y, Z, and W in terms of flexible design standards or lot setbacks or what have you, that we haven't done elsewhere. That's just the challenge here. So it's kind of that balance or that flushing out of other creative ways to maybe get around this. And what I'm seeing is one alternative. I'm sure there are several other designs that Bill's probably put together, I would imagine, over the years to look at. But I don't know. I think if we were going to consider doing this, I guess I would like to see some other alternatives, if that's
On site plan or home plan?
on site plan and home plan.
would like to see figure out what's going on here between,
Yeah.
Me too.
because I think you're cutting off 2 parcels.
Yeah, well, we can't do that. And I assumed we were working from the current Exhibit B for Phase 1, and if we're not, we'll change it.
I'd appreciate that. Again, I like this one better, but it's not what's in the condo docs. The Collins might have an issue with this one a whole lot more than what's in the condo docs too, since you're building in their backyard.
So my notes, show other raised ranches, show other home types that'll work on the other lots, on site and plan of home, correct?
Yes, I think that's accurate.
Okay. And we're in a great single-family home market at this time. Nobody knows how long that's going to last. And just to be clear, I don't want anything to do with multifamily there, duplex or otherwise.
Do we require sidewalks in that area?
Nope, that's why parking in the street is such a big deal, because
Yeah.
the kids are everywhere.
Yeah, I was just wondering, because then we got to worry about setbacks and, again, so, just a question.
We'll do a road section so that you can see what I'm trying to explain.
Yeah.
So that you can see that people aren't going to be parking in the street. You know, our driveways are a full two-car width coming to the garage. So there's places to park in the driveway as well as in the garage.
Do your condo docs, do your restrictions limit people being able to park boats and RVs and all of that? Because I know a lot of them do. I mean, they don't allow it.
I don't recall what Holly Forest 1 says.
It
but-
does not restrict it.
Okay, most likely we'd carry it forward.
Yeah. That does create a little bit of an issue. People like big boats.
There's 2 monster trailers on my street right now.
Just a note.
I don't know that this would be a good subdivision for people with big boats and RVs. It doesn't sound like it.
No, but people, they want them.
Oh, I know they do. But if they have really big boats, they could go put it in slip. I don't know. I just brought it up because there
There
are,
aren't any though, Renee.
I know.
Sorry.
I already know.
Saying that,
A little tough in
that
winter
it's a lot cheaper to store it in your driveway.
I know. I'm just saying there's a lot of subdivisions that don't allow it. That's all there is to it.
Right, and we didn't know.
Or it's temporarily, they can have it there, for certain times, but
There you go, food for your thought on your ordinance committee, Paul.
And also, if you could provide some feedback directly from like the road commission on those conversations you're having on that development, if you will, and their acceptance of your layout, that'd be helpful for us, or if you've gotten that far.
So the conversations that I have with them to date, they don't have any trouble with the lot layout. They want their, if it's going to be public, they've said they enforce AASHTO standards, which they do on a limited basis. But they want their 66-foot right away, and from there on out, that's that. And so at a 7% grade, this just don't work. We'd have 10 feet of fill to build a road, and we'd have to import it because there's no cut material that you can stabilize afterwards. We ain't gonna do it.
So you'd have to go the private road route.
If I can't get them to recognize that AASHTO standards go to 12%.
Gotcha. And what's
And that's published.
yeah, did they give you any feedback in terms of like a timing for approval
No.
or consideration?
No, because I didn't want to put a lot of effort into that if I'm gonna die here.
Sure. Yep.
If I'm gonna live here, then I'll go there.
Okay. All right. Well, I hope this was helpful to an extent. Give you some ideas, some feedback.
So I'm gonna read you my notes again. Show other raised ranches, show other homes that can go on the other lots that are on the south side of the road and to the west. Check our Exhibit B.
At least I told you now and not.
Yes, thank you. And you want to see those plans on the site, laid on the sites, and you want to see elevations of the homes.
Yeah, it'd be nice to have separate
Sure.
attachments,
Then
yeah.
I'm going to do a road section so that we can see what I'm talking about, because it's hard to visualize unless you do it. And then I made a note, likely not to allow outdoor storage of RVs and boats and other stuff. Okay? Anything else I should?
I think that's the list right now. And then any other provisions if they come up that you were looking for, I don't want to say provisions on, but us deviating from the existing zoning standards that would allow for this development to happen, if there's anything else, because there were a litany of different elements that were dealt in
Would we
there.
allow for the, I mean, those are things that you guys would have to work out, right, with a private lift station, and then the,
We would work with the township engineer on that.
okay, and then the other thing would be the offset measurement from the building foundation, not the drip line?
The setback.
Yeah, right.
So
You're
most
asking,
municipalities we deal with go from the foundation.
oh, I think
Your
we do
ordinance-
eaves.
Your ordinance
Yes,
goes from the drip
yes,
line.
yes.
And
does.
so it's just something we're used to doing.
Oh, okay, so that's really, that was just like a mistake in there, since
It's
you
not a
do.
mistake. It's something that we're used to doing. We have our own draftsmen and engineers, and so we're foundation oriented.
Okay, as opposed to, right, because I know Garfield goes from foundation, not the eve.
East Bay, I checked into that. East Bay Township does go to the
Oh,
foundation,
do we?
but it's 2 feet. So if it's
For the-
beyond 2 feet, then it's not, then
Okay,
it allows 2 feet of,
Does that mean if the drip line's more than 2 feet, it's counted?
Mm-hmm.
But if it's not, you go to the foundation?
that's the way I read the ordinance.
Very good. That was easy.
there you go. Okay, so just looking at what you have written here.
Yeah, thank you. I do appreciate your consideration and your help. So, and I'd prefer not to give it to my kids. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for the conversation too. We appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay. Couple things left. Public comment. Anyone from the public have anything left on their mind they'd like to come up and share?
Good evening, everybody. My name is Brendan Flensky, and I'm an Arbutus Lake resident, and I just wanted to offer a little personal experience based on the conversation this evening regarding the high water level on the various inland lakes. As a member of the Arbutus Lake Association, one of the tasks that I do for the association is monitoring the water level for Arbutus. And just to help put it in perspective for all of you that may not know how much these lakes move, 2011 was the lowest level recorded on the lake, and 2020, excuse me, 2020 was the highest level, and the separation between those two is over 3 feet. On a lake that's just shy, it's 395 acres. So depending on the topography of any individual particular lot, if you can imagine an incredibly steep lot down to the lake, 3 feet doesn't mean much side to side. But if it's a shallow lot, 3 feet could mean the difference between 25 feet of sandy walkout to the lake or water up to a foundation in some cases. So, that's just something that I thought was worth mentioning, as well as the notion of potentially having a certified surveyor help in that process. When my wife and I purchased our home in 2017, we did have a surveyor survey the lot. That professional survey came back at 0.83 acres. However, the meets and bounds description of the survey and that we're taxed on with the county, or pardon me, with the township, is 1 full acre. So there's a big difference. And when we talked to the tax group about that, the recommendation or the explanation that we were given was that the surveyors have very expensive equipment and they don't like to get it wet. That's what we were told. So the idea, which very well may be true, but the idea that they're going to take that expensive equipment and get it down to the water and establish what that high water mark is, it's a point in time.
Right.
There's another issue, as I'm sure many of you are familiar with. on Arbutus Lake, a property that was originally approved in 2018 for development. They've constructed over the years and built things based on what that point of time water level was, and now there's issues with what has been constructed. Is it in the 50-foot? Is it not in the 50-foot? Where was the 50-foot established from? When they received approval, when they received amended approval, when they eventually meet the conditions that still have not yet been met of that amended approval, you know? So it's a complex issue. I certainly understand that, and I just want to provide a little structure around that. So please feel free to contact me if there's any other questions that arise with that.
Can I ask you a question?
Absolutely.
So, this goes just to my personal experience. I don't have much experience with monitoring lake levels interior, but I did pay attention when FEMA updated all of their maps in like 2014, 2013, somewhere in there, and it changed the game dramatically for many homeowners on the big water side of the community. Does anybody know, we're just brainstorming now, but does anybody know, is that something that's a little more reliable? Is that something that's demonstrated on the inland lake side of things as well?
So again, from my personal experience, our home is probably one of the closest to the lake. At the time we purchased, we were less than 19 feet from the water's edge, so we're sweating it as the water level continued to rise. And that, we're not required to get flood insurance. You know, the FEMA we're not a designated flood zone on the property. All that title passed through just fine. So it's relying on those other agencies to help may not be the silver bullet for this.
Yeah.
And as far as FEMA goes, I've sold properties that were up on a hill, I mean, like out in Kalkaska, that literally, there's no way, the whole town would flood before this house did, but it's in a floodplain. So I don't think it's reliable.
There was no boots on the ground when the FEMA did their.
It's all aerial?
It's very yeah, exactly,
Very
so there's
general, it's
no,
very generic.
they don't take into the topography.
Well, FEMA is actually in the process of updating their flood maps, so they're all in draft form right now, but they're using the elevation-based ordinary high water mark for Grand Traverse Bay, so that's, I can't remember, 581.5 or something, and so, but they're modeling kind of like wave action, and there's quite a bit more area along Grand Traverse Bay. You'll see if you look at those flood maps that are identified as being in the flood zone and requiring insurance, just because they're looking at wave action and some of those other factors that affect flooding.
Just for the record, where I was, when the water, I have a concrete patio that reaches down to the water, and when the water level was relatively low, from the edge of my concrete patio, which is then 22 feet back, but from that edge to the water line was 57 feet. When the water was high, the entire concrete patio was underwater.
Oh, wow.
So,
Wow.
And the last thing that I'll mention, not all of the inland lakes have it, but Arbutus went through the process in 2004, I believe. We keep a record well back from the 50s, but that was based on a stationary pole that someone had put in the lake. In 2004, we received a USGS gauge that is in a fixed location on the lake, and that's how we can, measure the water level with certainty. Again, we're measuring the water level, not the ordinary high water mark, but we know where the maximum and minimums have been, and it's approximately a 30-year cycle from peak to trough. So,
Interesting.
that's more than my 3 minutes.
Thank you.
Unless there's any other questions.
Nope. Thank you.
Good evening, my name is Ralph Bednars, I live on Rainy Lake. I'm a retired limnologist, I've done ordinary water level measurements, I know how to do those. It's not the same in the lakes as it is on the Great Lakes. NOAA elevations on the Great Lakes are different in the lakes. Ordinary water level marks, and FEMA is typically floodplain elevations and not necessarily applicable to the inland lakes, especially inland lakes in this area. What you have here typically is groundwater lakes, fed lakes, kettle-type lakes formed by glaciers, with limited inlets and outlets. It's pretty much fluctuates with the groundwater levels, which do fluctuate with the Great Lakes, and that's why we've seen high water levels over the last couple of years, and now dropping levels. Measuring the ordinary high water mark is not a surveyor-type thing. It's taking that ordinary high water mark and tagging it to a data point for an elevation. That's what the surveyor does. A fixed point of a known elevation back to where that ordinary high water mark is. The ordinary high water mark is measured by typical water processes, both biological as well as physical, of where that water is at the time of the ordinary high water mark. And the ordinary high water mark can change. It did 2 years ago. So I would recommend that you work with Eagle, because Eagle needs to establish ordinary high water marks for their permitting processes. Any dredging or fill type permitting, they have to know where that is. And they should be publishing that for every lake, but they don't do it. But that's my recommendation. It's something that just a surveyor just doesn't totally do.
Sure, sure. Thanks for the clarity. Any other public comment? There's only a couple left. Okay. Great. And any updates from the planning commissioners?
Welcome, Rhonda.
Yes,
There you go.
if all goes well.
Yeah.
Chum them up a little bit. They're a tough batch.
Yeah.
We've got our next meeting August the 3rd at 6:30, and thank you all for your time. Anything
It's a
else?
Wednesday,
It's a Wednesday.
day after the election, so
Good
it's
to-
going to be a day later than
Good to
usual.
check. Thank you. All right, thanks, everybody. We're adjourned.